This section introduces one of the novel's main characters, Neiman Gorge. Neiman heads the town's library and literary infirmary. In this town, there's an infirmary attached to the library in order to treat the cuts, scrapes, and bruises that the pursuit of knowledge is heir to. All you need to know about Neiman at this point is that he loves to use big words. The upper class in this town are known as Brittlebombs, and the lowest class are known as Dregs. This section begins with a description of the library. Erected during an epoch when knowledge was akin to gold, considered more essential than bread, when wisdom was proven more effective in quelling one's enemies than bullets or betrothing one's sister. Neiman's palatial surroundings featured the most advanced architectural effects lauded in that bygone era. Closing his eyes, he pictured the lower levels, the towering labyrinth of portals, galleries, study chambers, and conference rooms, separated not by walls, but by Roman columns arrayed with Greek Corinthian capitals, connected by graceful archways. Higher up, reached by a circular spiraling ambulatory, were the chapels, alcoves, and 12 basilicas of learning, each capped by high vaulted ceilings, their walls stuffed beyond capacity with what Neiman affectionately dubbed his absolute bestest of friends, that is, his books. His fingers laced and resting comfortably on his abdominous book belly, Neiman relished the accumulating echo of footsteps, page turning, and endless whispering, the drone rising to hover in the upper chambers like invisible bats. Vaguely, he recalled an ancient legend. Was it something about a tower of bubble or babble? But then he reassured himself. Dealing with troglodytes was the price an erudite cosmopolite like himself paid for the privilege of being the town's highest salaried librarian. Neiman glanced at his attire. Though not his habit to concern himself with outward appearance, something had possessed him to dress impeccably that morning. He had pulled his tweed vest and jacket out of storage, donned a powder blue silk shirt, navy blue cravat, and matching slacks. He had stood before his morning mirror, painstakingly parting his dark curly afro this way and that, attempting in vain to somehow subdue his long cucumber face, his floppy elephantine ears. But there seemed little he could do to alter the features fate had seen fit to grace him with. He glanced at his watch, the hands miniature figures of his venerable heroes Socrates and Plato. Ms. Pritt would be by at any moment. He wrung his hands, admonishing himself for nibbling his nails. He inventoried his office, finding solace in the reassuring presence of so many close friends. They crowded around in all shapes and sizes, tall, slim, short, thick, leather-bound and paperback, vellum, lambskin, pigskin, the economical peasant hide, some maroon, some mauve, vermilion, beige, roan, russet, all colors really. Their bookmarks sticking out like panting tongues, some leaned like ladies of the evening, some sat, napped, frolicked, others stretched out on their bellies like babies in cribs, or with pages spread eagle on the divan, across throw pillows and snuggled up to cushions. Those on bookshelves stood like so many soldiers guarding his sanctuary, stern and resolute, determined to fend off the forces of darkness, prejudice, superstition, and ignorance. His thoughts returned to Ms. Pritt, their impending conference. Neiman resolved to be firm, gentle, yet unyielding. He would voice his displeasure, but not at the expense of her feelings, of course. Thus decided, he resumed his nail-biting. That is, till the all too familiar dulcet tones of Ms. Pritt interrupted his snack. "May I come in?" she chimed. Neiman bolted upright. His feet, having slovenly found their way across the edge of his desk, slammed onto the carpet. His peaceful reverie squealed on its brakes. He felt a peculiar sensation, suggestive of the hair on the nape of his neck standing at attention. He might have been mistaken, but his face felt beet red. "I beg your pardon, Miss Britt. I seem to have been lost in my own intellection." Neiman reached for the nearest object, a thin volume of ancient witticisms which he held to his chest like a frightened child might clutch a teddy bear. Miss Britt, 3 inches taller than Neiman in her high heels, entered. Her sleeveless red dress clung to her hips, the neckline revealing just enough of her breasts to send Neiman imagining what it might look a few inches lower. "If you're busy, I could come back," she offered, parting her lips in a smile Neiman found disconcerting. No, that's all right, Miss Britt." He struggled to gain control of his Adam's apple, wondering who was playing with the thermostat. Didn't they realize heat rises and hovers in his office? Someone should teach these Neanderthals to be more considerate. "How can I be of service to you?" he heard himself ask. "The bookends, Mr. Gorge. You said I might stop by to look at your bookends." "Bookends?" "Oh, yes, bookends. There." He pointed to an antique arabesque coffee table. Among the lounging periodicals and reference material were 2 hand-carved, heart-shaped bookends, embellished by tail-wagging puppies and kissing doves. "Why, these are adorable." As Miss Britt bent to scoop up the bookends, Neiman saw, or imagined he saw, the outline of her undergarment. How were the scholars and schoolboys of this learned institution to keep their thoughts on their studies when members of the staff went about attired like common? No, he wouldn't think it, much less say it. Her stockings swishing, Miss Britt sidled up to him and thanked him profusely. Why did she wear that perfume, he wondered, and insist on smiling that way? And what was wrong with her eyes? Her lashes were fluttering like hummingbird wings. Fumbling with his book, then tossing it aside, Neiman moved away, explaining how the bookends were a gift from a silly schoolgirl who, or so he suspected, had a ridiculous crush on him. "She has good taste," Miss Britt responded, her dove-gray eyes seeming to pierce through the librarian. Neiman slammed his knee into a chair. "Well, yes," he found himself agreeing, his Adam's apple once again in a state of rebellion. He forced a smile. "You know these schoolgirls. Too bad. She was a promising young Aristotle." He looked off in the distance, recalling thin tapered fingers twisting the end of dark cascading hair, a young mind poring over tomes of antiquated philosophy. Neiman faced a window overlooking the southern precinct of town. Flat-topped, squat buildings bullied their way into the foreground, their squared shoulders denying any challengers any right to dominate the skyline. Farther back, visible more in Neiman's imagination, were the mansions, manors, palaces of the privileged, their classical architecture modified by influences of early Brittlebaum-esque, luscious lawns, expansive gardens, encircling moats. A shadow fell over him. The sun ducked under a lone cumulus cloud, returning Neiman to the present. He turned, staring blankly at Miss Britt. "I wonder, Miss Britt, I have just finished a mesmeric book. In your reading, have you ever stumbled upon the works of Saskia Swamin?" Miss Britt smiled. "I don't believe I have." "Then allow me to acquaint the two of you." Neiman motioned Miss Britt to the chair facing his desk. Reaching for an anorexic volume of natural lambskin, he propped himself on the corner of his desk, resolving to discuss the matter of Miss Britt's attire another time, when they were better acquainted, he told himself. "Saskia Swamin," Neiman began, "slender as she is a tasty morsel." He pressed her slim spine to his thin lips, looking inward a moment before proceeding. A bit abstruse for conventional scholars, but Swamin, heavily influenced by the mystics, concluded that each of us, you, me, the janitorial staff, even those nasty neighbors living next door, we all possess within us all the wisdom of the ages. Neiman tossed Swamin aside as if she were no more than a book. He paced the room, hands clasped behind his back. Problem is, just as each of us have instances we can't quite remember a word, a title, or the name of an acquaintance, each of us can't remember what we knew when we first entered this existence. Ms. Britt crossed her legs, shook her head, and brushed the hair from her eyes. Life, Neiman said, rapping his knuckles on the window ledge, is thus a quest to remember, to recall, if you will, what we already know deep down inside. He retrieved Sashka Swamin and opened her fluttering pages at random. Ah, here Swamin elucidates her position on what she calls hombres de garbage, those who in their ruinous ignorance pull the rest of us down to their noxious state of perniciousness. Neiman began reading. Hombres de garbage reinforce our mistaken assumption that we are less than we truly are. Some even exalt in their baser nature, convincing others to do the same. Thus, we hire ourselves out to stress factories, servants to their, and ultimately our own less than perfect nature. In the evening, we return home to lead lives of quiet defecation. Only the enlightened, the occasional brave, the uncommonly foolish, or the lucky, break through the chains of the status quo to move ever closer to that wisdom etched in every atom of each our own beings. Neiman slammed the book shut and slid it back on its shelf. As Miss Britt offered no response, he continued. Swamin further asserts that it is the bounden duty of those of us we scholars, savants, and lettered luminaries, even the lowly but learned shopkeeper, the compassionate butcher, the freakishly gifted dreg. It is the bounden duty of those of us who unearth bits and pieces of our higher nature to enlighten the ignorant other as to anything we can happily recall. Lately, I've been rereading one of my favorite thinkers. Neiman turned, retrieving a modest volume sprawled in the center of his desk. Hayat al-Ishraq. This is his masterpiece, The Breaking Wind of Reason, a brilliant vivisecting of the encumbrance of human ratiocination. Neiman noted the hem of Miss Britt's dress resting slightly above her knee. He noted also the smoothness of said knees and a small patch of darkness between those knees, which led him to imagine. No, he would not allow his thoughts to go there. He glanced at his watch. The lanky Plato pointed just past 12, while the diminutive Socrates gazed up at 11. Oh dear, look at the time. It always seems to fly when I'm in your company. He blushed upon realizing the unintended importation of his remark. I'm needed in surgery before my 1 o'clock discussion group. You really ought to join us sometime, Ms. Britt. I'd love to, Mr. Gorge, but your lectures seem to be scheduled when I'm on hospital duty. But thank you for these darling bookends. Ms. Britt rose. Maybe I can return the favor sometime, Mr. Gorge. Neiman accepted the soft, silky palm. Neiman, please, call me Neiman. Okay, Neiman, and please, call me Kate. Okay, Kate. The invisible tentacles of Kate's perfume wreaked havoc on Neiman's sense of equilibrium. She turned and left, leaving the memory of her smile and the subtle swivel of her hips. Neiman stood smiling, staring at nothing in particular. Then he recalled the reason he had summoned her. He cursed himself. He had avoided the moment again. Buried under the books on his desk was a slender pamphlet on library etiquette. Again he skimmed the brief section subtitled Dress Code, baffled as to why there was no specific suggestion on how to deal with provocative attire. and there was nothing forbidden the use of lipstick, rouge, perfume, and not even mascara.